No bookie will give you odds for waking up tomorrow morning. That's the reality of it. We're all on one trajectory. We don't talk about it nearly enough. And one of the greatest tragedies as a behaviorist is to watch other people's behavior and to see people behave in a way that would suggest they're just treating this like some kind of weird, bizarre rehearsal. And they'll get to do it all over again at some point and just edit the bits out that didn't work. We don't get that. This is it. Well, this is a good one because I sample everything. I'm a big geek when it comes to stats and figures, and almost all, not exclusively, but almost all of the organizations that come to me and say, can you help us be a high performing team, or we need to focus on high performance. When I throw that back to them and say, okay, what does a high performance team look like? What is a high performing team? Almost none of them can describe it. They just know it's this sort of aspirational thing that we know we should be doing, but they don't necessarily know what it is or what that consists of. I think you could ask lots of different people, they'll probably give you lots of different answers, but and you know, the internet will be awash with interpretations of this. But from a behavioral perspective specifically, I think there are probably a couple of things that really make those organizations stand out. The first one is curiosity. You know, some of the best people I work with, that's wrong. Some of the most interesting people I work with from a purely personal perspective, not necessarily the best, are the high performing teams already. You know, the Premiership elite sports teams, the high performing government teams, the high performing industrial teams, because they know that when they've reached that point, just like a sports or professional athlete, they're now looking to, okay, how do we dial it up a little bit? How do we move the needle just a tiny bit more? Whereas there is this misconception by an awful lot of organizations and indeed teams that high performance is this sort of, you know, total elitist definitive point, and once we get there, everything will be fine. And actually the work continues, just continues in a slightly different way. So curiosity is naturally that characteristic that helps us kind of look forward. What else? What's new? Okay, we've got that. We're really brilliant. We've got 10 out of 10. How do we move the needle somewhere else? The second thing is a culture and an environment which allows for, dare I say, encourages mistakes and risk. Because it's only through exhibiting different behaviors and trying different behaviors that we're going to get anything new or different. It's that older days that you can't keep, you know, delivering the same behavior and expecting different results. Behavior begets behavior, but it is also habitual. We are creatures of habit. So it's about trying different things to develop new habits. The third thing I would say is a real insatiable desire to improve, to change. High performing teams are not afraid of change. And I would say that about 75% of the organizations I work with have cultures that are anxious about change. And that's normally a cultural problem. There's normally some history there as to why they might be anxious about things that change. It's normally senior leadership teams perhaps not delivering on their word, or changing and not communicating very well. So I would say those are the three sort of, and that's enough, right? If you think about those three things to work on, that's quite a lot of focus. So it's no good, I don't think, having a list of 10 things because you'll just cherry pick through them. I think you should think about the elements that are the most effective, the most efficacious. I've spent just over 10 years researching what the best questions are to ask to get the biggest changes quickest. And I would say, but then wouldn't I? I would say those three things probably are the defining features of a high performing team. There are several. The most significant, and it requires not very much effort and not much work actually, but it requires quite a significant mindset shift. We've got to almost, you know, turn a 90-degree corner to look at this very differently. And that is the focus on the people. Leadership is a craft. And it is leaders as individuals leading other people. It's people leading people. The bare bones of leadership, the sort of beating heart, the golden thread, is getting other people to want to do something differently. It's a lot more complicated than that and a lot more complex as a craft. But we have focused for far too long, to the detriment, actually. You look at the stats, it's horrific. Forbes released a piece of research earlier this year. Over 70% of CEOs said that they did not believe they had high-performing people in their teams, in their leadership teams. 2/3 of the workplaces that were sampled said that people had left a job because of poor leadership. Like, the stats are bad about leadership across pretty much every industry across the world, because we are focused on buying into leadership systems or processes or physical pillars or models, or we just need to focus on the people. It needs to be much more human-centered. And the clients I work with are so hungry for that information because they see seismic changes almost immediately. So yeah, it's the greatest challenge, I think, is just viewing it from a completely different point of view, from a person-centered leadership perspective. I love this question. I like to be the cat among the pigeons, in a good way. I think it's really important to rock the boat and ask more questions. And fundamentally, the importance of change management is that as human beings, we don't like change. We resist change a lot. If we're fully in control, we love that. I'm going to redecorate the lounge. I've bought new cushions. I'm going to put sheer up here. I want a new carpet. I'm going to move the sofa. All of that's great, totally within our charge. But when change happens to us, we see that as destabilizing, because most of the things around us form a part of our identity, as much as your name, the mug you use for work, the routes you travel to work, the authors you read, the websites you visit, the position you have your car seat in. All of those things form us. They're a part of us. And take a little bit of that away and we lose a bit of our perceived identity. And that's what change does. It threatens to destabilize the comfort zone and the things we know. Change management is critical, because without that, without a support system and a structure to help people first understand the importance of change, change is evolution, change is development, change is progress. And I love the fact that if you just change the word, it kind of mixes things up a little bit. It's like changing the word complaint to feedback. It sort of just changes it, shifts the way it feels inside your brain. And language is so important to how we think, feel, and behave. So change management is the only way that we successfully move through change without causing significant cultural disruption and ruptures. And those ruptures normally are deep and they take a long time to repair. So I'm a big advocate of people understanding what change management is and making sure that the systems and tools and the processes that you use are super effective, because change is a wonderful thing. It's happening to us all the time. It's forced upon us every time that your phone updates its software and you have to work out where everything is all over again. But also it's happening literally every day within us. We just aren't aware of the changes that happen all the time, because most of the time they're small and gradual. Of course, when they happen at work, they're normally a little bit more dramatic. And that's why it needs a much more careful approach. None of us, no bookie will give you odds for waking up tomorrow morning. That's the reality of it. We're all on one trajectory. We don't talk about it nearly enough. And one of the greatest tragedies as a behaviorist is to watch other people's behavior and to see people behave in a way that would suggest they're just treating this like some kind of weird, bizarre rehearsal. And they'll get to do it all over again at some point and just edit the bits out that didn't work. We don't get that. This is it. So I have a huge respect for the time that people give me in order to listen to me. And I would hope that, and I work hard to make sure that this is the case, but I would hope that there is something in what I say, at least one thing, but I would hope for at least 9, at least something that will make you think, feel, or behave differently, that will create a positive impact. If I can say one thing that will help you to better understand why you do what you do, to think in a way that is either perhaps more positive or less stressful, or helps you achieve a goal or a dream, that makes getting up in the morning for me worthwhile. And every morning when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I say is thank you. I'm not religious, but a lot of people didn't get to wake up this morning. And the second thing I ask myself is, how do I feel? And I choose a word or a couple of words that describe how I feel. And then the next thing I say is, okay, how do I want to feel? And then I actively choose my framed mindset and sort of behavior for that day. And I would hope that by listening to me, you get the opportunity to ask the right questions that are going to create for you quite extraordinary results.